welcome to the Road to Innsmouth podcast. We're your guides, Gareth
and Matt.
I hope everyone's staying safe out there during all this times. And today we have a special guest on our podcast, who's Gordon. So hello, Gordon.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Well, staying safe. We're in Birmingham, did you say you was?
I'm in Birmingham, yeah.
So we're both in Sussex. I'm at work in the van at the moment, so you might hear cars driving past while I'm sat in a lay-by. Have you got the kids at home, Matt, or are you home alone?
No, I'm not picking up from school for another couple of hours, so I'll be fine.
So we've got Gordon with us today, who's had numerous experiences out of the paranormal.
That's correct.
From a very young age. Was it 5? Did you have your first experiences there?
I was about 4 or 5. It was definitely very young. I remember wearing shorts, so yeah, definitely quite young when my first one was first happened. Shall I tell you about that one?
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
That is where I grew up. It was a town just south of Glasgow called Kilmarnock. Now, we had a very old 1920s bus station with an alleyway. You could walk up the side of the bus station. You go up this alleyway to go in a side door, but the side door was halfway up the alleyway. So if you carried on, it was just a dead end. Now, I was walking up there as a sort of young man of age 4 or 5. And there was a girl ahead of me who was about 2 or 3 years older than me, and she's walking ahead of me, and she carries on up the alleyway, and I go in the door, and I think, well, that's a bit odd. Stick my head back out the door, and there's no one there. And what I do is get very scared and run off because it's like, oh, this person who was ahead of me has disappeared. No explanation for that. She was just there 1 minute and gone the next.
And she looked completely like a solid person and everything, and
yeah, absolutely. I can.
Anything weird.
I can still remember she had blonde hair, wearing sort of girly clothes and stuff, just walking ahead of me.
Oh,
how old was she?
She was about a couple of years older than me.
Oh, okay.
It's just one of those.
Right, was you with your parents at the time then? Or?
Yeah, they were in the bus stop. They'd gone up the inside of the bus station, and I'd gone up the alley just for the sake of being contrary,
Yeah.
Because I knew they were in the bus station, so I could walk up the alley, and sort of it was just a different way of going to where I was going.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea what it was you'd seen at the time? Did you think about it, or was?
Absolutely not. You just never think about it. As a sort of kid, you don't think of ghosts as being like you. You sort of think, at that age, it's like a ghost is something like Casper, or somebody in a white sheet, sort of with no legs, that sort of thing. So yeah, it kind of freaks you out a bit because you think, oh, where did that person go? She's vanished completely,
Oh wow!
It's kind of one of those things you just remember as a kid. I just was never able to explain to myself what happened until the penny dropped.
Yeah. Did you ever do any research on the bus station, or?
It's gone now, unfortunately.
Oh.
It got knocked down in the sort of the 80s when they rebuilt a lot of the town centre. When I was about 11 or 12, me and a friend sort of went for a urban explore around the empty bus station before they knocked it down, and there was sort of nothing in there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Wasn't any feelings of anything, that sort of thing.
So, with your other experiences, are like feelings something you get like before it happens? Are you aware something might happen, or?
It's totally random, I'm not a ghost hunter. I'm not by any sort of imagination or any stretch of whatever a medium or a psychic. I just seem to be somebody who attracts this stuff, or maybe I'm just aware of it. I would never say that I was like a spiritualist medium or a psychic or any of that sort of stuff. I'm just a regular bloke. It just seems to happen, or I just seem to notice these things.
You've had quite a few, haven't you, through your time?
Yeah.
You did have a cap.
I did have a cap. Yeah. The next one I saw, I was about 8 or 9. Yeah, 7. I was about 7 when I saw the next thing, and then I didn't see anything until about the age of 19. But
So
I lived on. I lived on a new housing estate, so there was probably nothing in the house I was living in. The house I grew up in, so it was old farmland beforehand. So there was probably nothing to sort of haunt, as it were, until I was 19. The second one I saw when I was 7, I was in a friend of the family. We were in their house, which was probably from the 1800s, and I saw a group of people underneath their sort of staircase in the kitchen. There was a cupboard, a store cupboard under the stairs in the kitchen, and I sort of, being nosy, I'd never been in this house before, and I'm like, oh, this is an old house. I'm gonna have a look around. And I was in the kitchen. I stuck my head into this cupboard, and there was a group of three people sort of looking back at me, and what they were wearing was Victorian clothing. Now, I didn't know this at the time. Sort of over time, you sort of learn the different types of fashion people have and what have you. And this is what I saw. I saw these three people. Now, they were sort of huddled in this cupboard under the stairs as if they were hiding from people in the house, and they're sort of looking at me as if to say, like, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be looking at us. How come we're here? That sort of thing.
And that sort of negates as a time slip, because obviously they were aware of you as you were aware of them.
Yeah, that's right.
So obviously it wasn't like a stone tape recording type.
Stone tape recording, yeah. I know what you mean.
So it's obviously more, you're aware of physically moving into you moving into their time period.
Yeah, and they were hiding. It looked like they'd sort of gone there to hide from the people in the house, But they, they weren't very sort of pleased to see me, or pleased to sort of see that I could see them.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. That's really interesting, actually.
Worried that you're going to give them away, maybe.
I didn't give them away. I did what I did before and just sort of legged it out of there. Oh, who are these weird people looking at me? I didn't like the look of them because I thought they were adults. They were real enough.
Yeah.
They were all wearing black. Now, the best thing I could sort of relate to was the Good Old Days TV series from the 70s, which was sort of people dressed up in vaudeville clothing. It's like women with big hats and sort of men wearing stiff collars and stuff. Now, I'd never seen that before. But, when you sort of grow up in the 70s, you'd see it on telly. And I'd think, well, that's the people I saw. The same sort of styles. Sort of looking at me saying...
Was that in the same village as the bus station?
This is in the same place, yeah. It's quite. I mean, it's a sort of smallish town, but they had a lot of old buildings from the 20s, which is where the bus station comes from. The house I was in on this occasion was quite an old house from late 1800s at least. So there's going to be something there, with sort of different generations living in it and what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't see anything until I was about 19, and I'm cycling home from a girlfriend's house about 1 a.m. I'm on this quite old road that goes out to the country. Now, what I see is it looks like a wisp of, a small cloud at knee height, just sort of coming along the road towards me. As I'm cycling one direction, it's coming towards me. Now, there's no cars about because it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And it sort of goes past me, and I went, hello, ghost. As you do. And it went underneath this bridge, and under the bridge, and then round the corner.
Wow.
So it's following the road, basically. Now, this road has got sort of stuff on it. There's a bus used to run. It was the A1 bus company, but you don't need to know that. It used to run from town centre to the seaside and what have you. It was just like a regular bus route, and there was a famous one of the buses would have this old guy who would sit up on the bus on his own. The bus driver would always see him in his mirror looking up. The sort of tube that they used to have. Before CCTV, and he'd always see this old guy. He'd get to the bus station at the other end, and the bus would be empty without him getting off.
Huh, that's interesting.
But I never experienced that. But I mean, you see these things. I mean, the two I've previously seen were sort of quite solid looking. This third one was definitely just like a little cloud of smoke moving along.
And was it the feeling you got that you knew it was a spirit and a ghost, as opposed to it being some mist or something? Did you have something tangible attached to it that made you think of that, or
just the fact
that you knew?
Well, it was just the fact that it was just totally mundane. It was just like 1 o'clock in the morning. There's no one else around. There's no vehicles around to cause it. There's no wind or any kind of atmospheric stuff. It was a completely calm, dead night, as it was,
Oh.
And it was just moving up the middle of the road. And then it moved round the corner of the road. It followed the bend. So I cycled home very quick.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm going home now. I've had enough of this.
You've seen mist before that, or after that? You saw mist again, didn't you? Did you say in one of your flats?
Yeah, two occasions I've seen it. No, there's one. It was moving. It was in the dark. We were in the living room. The corridor was dark. It was about 1 a.m, and it just basically was a green luminous mist at waist height that just sort of floated past the living room door, which had been open. We saw it float past, like just sort of went down the corridor to the end bedroom.
Oh.
We were sort of me and my other half, who was there, was sort of like, "Did you see that?" Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely nothing. I mean, the other one with the mist, it was more of a outline of a figure. Now, I was staying at her place, which was an old nursing home in Leeds. They'd turned it into accommodation for the college. And I woke up in the middle of the night. There was something pressing on my chest. And I was like, what is this? I woke up with this thing pressing on me. I look, my eyes open, and it's like there's a outline of a figure in a sort of green mist pushing on my chest.
Wow.
And I sort of waved at it like this, and it it just sort of evaporated. But, I got the feeling, because it was sort of girls only, but they allowed people to stay over. Because it was girls only, I got the feeling that, this was like some old nurse or something who didn't like me being there.
Yeah.
That was quite good, because it was like interactive in a way, but I didn't like the way it was doing it, It's,
Well, they have that feeling of pushing your chest is also like sleep paralysis, isn't it? People suffer, say, the same sort of thing.
yeah,
You can't
absolutely.
move.
But on this occasion, I woke up and actually saw the thing.
Well, yes,
that was
you moved as well. Moved your arm, so get away. So
Maybe they
These
like you
things
so
that-
much because you take it all in your stride.
yeah,
Well, that's the
Better.
thing, if you're open to it, if you're open to seeing this stuff or experiencing it, I think it's like an intuition,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
eventually, you get kind of attuned to it, I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what they do with maybe mediums and what have you in the spiritualist church. They just get used to seeing it. I mean, I've seen orbs. Now, that's a contentious thing, because people say orbs, they're
Insects flying past.
yeah, insects, dust, that sort of thing. But I've seen them in the flesh without using a camera, without anything on film,
Yeah.
and they've been sort of interactive, like they'll come into a room, hover for a bit, and then sort of drift back out again, that sort of thing.
With everything you've seen, though, would you say when you were a child it was more scarier than it is now? Then has anything scared you now?
There is the episode in Cheltenham where I made the schoolboy error of winding up a spirit.
Oh yeah.
Never do it. It's not good. It's rude. That's basically, it's not something you want to do, because they were people once.
Yeah.
And you're being offensive to somebody, or you're being rude. It's not good. It's not good behavior anyway. You wouldn't do it to a living person. So maybe that sort of impression that's left, it's not good to do to either. I mean, we'd gone to Cheltenham for the day and gone into a museum in Cheltenham. We're looking around. My other half goes off to look at something more interesting. I'm sort of stood in one of the exhibit rooms, and I get the impression that there's somebody who's moved in front of, and that they're moving out of the room. This is me just using my intuition. So I
Yeah.
sort of follow this feeling, follow it through one room to another. It goes up a corridor, ducks into another side room. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to follow this thing. I'm following it because I've got this really strong impression. I'll go into the side room, and it's just like it's there in the middle of the room, sort of like feeling quite annoyed because it's been trying to avoid me. I've followed it, and I'm like going, can't really do anything because it's public. And I thought, right, okay. So I leave there, go back, meet up with my other half, and then I get the impression that there's something in one of the room we're in that just really wants to do me some harm, And I was just like, I've got to leave here. I've just got to leave because there's something nasty about this. Suddenly, it just the feeling in the room changed to sort of a bit malevolent, And I'm just like, I've got to get out of here because this is going to do me harm. And she was like, what are you on about? I
Like
literally ran out of the building,
Wow. Sorry, your partner doesn't have the same feelings then with you as you.
Not really, no. I mean, we'd see things in the old flat together, or we saw here, like in this house, we saw like a little cat, shadow of a cat, come through the wall of the alley, and it walked across the floor and then out of the front door. Totally random.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, she sees the odd thing now and again, but it's different for everybody. Everybody's perception is different.
Oh yeah. But she's as open-minded as you.
On and off, because her mum is quite sensitive to these things. She went to a graveyard because she does genealogy, and she felt she was being followed around this graveyard. all the way home. All the way home, she was going across a couple of fields and stuff to get back to her mum's house. So she goes back to her mum's house, and her mum wakes her up the next day and says, "Oh, you must have brought something back with you, because I went to the lounge this morning and there was something hovering in the lounge, and I opened the door and let him out." You know, she's like, "Okay, good." But I mean, she grew up in quite a haunted house. That's the one I stayed at.
Yeah.
It just had loads of things happened to me within the space of a week, you know.
Yeah, you said in some of your encounters have been with her family home.
Yeah, that's right. All sorts of things. There was like sort of lights, you know, like a misty, sort of foggy sort of light that would hang out. It would be halfway up the stairs going from the ground floor to the first floor. You could see it through the banisters. Sort of someone else in the house said, "Well, it's like a little girl who sits and looks at you through the railings of the banister," you know, that sort of thing.
Oh.
Out of the corner of your eye, if you're sitting in the living room, you would see the kitchen door would be open, because it was like a sort of arch, and you'd see all these things flitting past like really quick, and it was like a really busy sort of kitchen. You'd look in the kitchen, there's nothing there, you know. What else? I tuned up a guitar in the middle of the night. The guitar string on the D suddenly went boing, sort of broke for no reason whatsoever. I mean, this is in the middle of summer. Guitar strings would break in the middle of winter because of the cold, because the metal would contract,
Yeah.
but not random. If you tune the guitar string properly, it shouldn't just kind of break, especially in the middle of the night. Just doing it to annoy us.
Not a fan of the music.
I went out to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. There was like a light going up the next flight of stairs to the sort of bedrooms above, you know, that sort of thing. And you could hear footsteps a lot as well, because we'd been in the house on our own, and you'd hear sort of like somebody walking up the stairs across the landing. And it's like, is that somebody in the house? And you'd be looking outside, and there's no one there, you know. But yeah,
Do they still?
sorry, they don't live there now. No, unfortunately, they moved. But there was the other thing was the curtains twitched. We're in the house. It's quite late at night. Everyone else has gone to bed, and they had these big velour curtains in the sort of lounge windows. Now it was as if somebody'd ran along on the inside of the curtains and run their hand across it. So you'd see this sort of like. I was like, okay, that's weird.
Yeah, that is.
And on the dining room table, they had a candelabra, pause for effect, which just lifted up straight up off the table, and it sort of wobbled in midair and then came back down again. And I was like,
Wow.
hello. I was like, hello. How are you? You know.
Wow.
Was this a feeling that there was multiple different spirits, or all the same one communicated in like a different ways, do you think?
I think with that, it was just, there was lots of things. Like, there was like a little girl on the stairs. There was an old man who would be up in the attic smoking in his rocking chair. There was the ones downstairs. I don't know what they were. They were just like sort of more visible because they were moving actual objects, but I don't know who they were or what they were. It just felt like an old house. It was like an old house, just a busy old house, you know.
Yeah, I suppose it could have been different time frames of multiple families all living there doing what they used to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Could you smell the smoke then when he was in the attic?
This is one that I was told about, that occasionally you would get that tobacco smell. Now, I mean, this is the thing I've got a theory about, because, you know, everyone used to smoke in the old days, because I grew up in the 60s and 70s. Everybody would smoke. They'd smoke everywhere, you know. You'd be on the bus, people would be smoking. You'd be sort of in shops, people would be smoking, you know. So, I mean, it's possible that tobacco smell could be in the building.
Yeah.
And you get maybe some sort of atmospheric condition that releases the smell that's been there for years and years. But people, I think, like they'd have deliveries to the house. People would say, "Oh, you know, we saw the old guy, but he just wouldn't come. He was at the window, but he just wouldn't come down." And they're like, "Oh no, he's not there."
All right. Wow.
Yeah, but that was an interesting week and a half.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Say something about her. Was it her dad or your father-in-law as well? When you go on holidays, didn't you say you said?
It's a granddad, yeah. Occasionally, you
Alright.
get the smell of his sort of aftershave whenever we'd go to like a family sort of holiday home or somewhere, because their dad used to live in Spain, you know. So you'd get the smell of him sort of out there, you know, which is it's quite nice in a way. I think, you know, it's sort of people,
Yeah.
you know, people coming and seeing you on holiday.
Yeah.
Family reunion, you know, it's quite good.
Oh.
The smells bring back good memories, don't they? Normally, so it's not like a.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of the strongest senses, isn't it, for memory recollection?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I've had things with sort of premonition as well. 10 o'clock, about 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. Yeah, 10:30 at night. I'm sort of in the lounge watching telly. We're about to go to bed and stuff. This black shape comes in the room. It's like a big, tall sort of shape. It's just about over 6 foot. Comes in. It's like a outline of a figure, and it waves to me like this, really frantic. I'm like, okay. And it goes away very quick. I go into work the next day, and they said, a lot of people were crying, and they said, "Oh, so and so, she died yesterday, just totally random." It's like,
Oh.
okay, what time? What time was that about? Oh, 10:30. And I was like, "Oh, that's really nice," because she's come in and said goodbye.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it kind of fitted because she was a very tall person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing she would do would be come in and sort of wave goodbye.
That's it.
That's not obviously something that I told a lot of people because they'd be like, "Well, that's just weird."
Yeah. Yeah.
So when was your last sighting or happening?
I suppose it was a couple of years ago, we went to Edinburgh for sort of looking around all the historical stuff there. We went on a ghost tour of Catacomb.
Oh yeah. Oh, I
They're,
really do that.
they're really good. They're really good. They take you underneath the town. They take you through all these little dark
Yeah, 'cause
alleyways.
essentially Edinburgh's a city built on a city, isn't it? For all intents and purposes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and a lot of the old sort of parts of town are covered up. You go to Mary King's Close, where they just basically paved over a building and just left all the stuff inside. And you can go through like this old sort of building that was left as it was. People were still living in there, but they were kind of living underground. We went on a tour of the catacombs. They took us on a tour of the catacomb, and they'd say, "Oh, this room here is quite famous because there's a ghost of a little girl who does this, there's a ghost of a woman who does that." And at the end of it, we went to the Covenanters graveyard, which is in Greyfriars Kirk. Now, this is a place where a load of people had been imprisoned, and they just put them in this yard, this part of the graveyard that had been sort of like fenced off, and just left them to die, basically. They left them for about 3 months or something.
Wow.
Just because, the way politics were in those days. And it's quite horrible there. It is. The Greyfriars sort of churchyard is quite horrible. They've got very big mausoleums that are really sort of run down because of all the sort of pollution that they used to have there. They're kind of crumbling, so it looks quite gothic and quite horrible. They take us to that. We get into the Covenanters, and they have a thing called a jumper-outer, right? So they're giving you a little bit of a talk, and they'll have another guy who's part of the tour, who's an actor, who'll jump out at a particular time to make everybody sort of spooked, as it were, And that was quite good. We're in this old mausoleum. We come out, everybody's walking up to leave this bit, and I see this big black circle swoops over everybody's heads. Now, no one else seems to notice it. I see it clear as day. I thought it's either a crow or a bat or something, and I'm just like, well, why is no one else seeing this? Yeah, there was a thing. We came out of there. There was like a little grave that had been fenced off, and I saw this swirling sort of mist, ectoplasmic mist or something. I'd never heard of this before. I was like, okay, it just looked like a load of cotton wool sort of going round like this. I was like, okay, that's another one. I'll look that one up when I get home as well.
Wow. I was meant to go to Edinburgh in May until all this happened. Those catacombs, we were going to go down there.
It is very good. It is a really. I mean, I used to go there in the 80s. I knew somebody who lived there, and this is before it, because they've cleaned it up a lot now, and it's a lot more sociable. But in the 80s, it was just horrible. You'd be coming out of pubs and what have you at 1 a.m, and you'd have to go through all these like quite gothic Victorian sort of alleyways in the fog. And it's just like, this is just like something like Jack the Ripper. I mean, I had something recently. Monday night.
Oh, really?
Well, this is the thing. Somebody was talking to me about Whistle and I'll Come. This is the thing I mentioned earlier. And I said, well, every time I talk about it, something in the house gets knocked over. There's been 2 occasions. One, I was talking to my half about it. We were just chatting about this TV program that we'd seen because I've got the DVD, and a load of stuff flew off the shelf in the bathroom. And it was all things that had been stacked up and had been there for ages. I was like, okay. Second time, a couple of months later, we were talking about it. And right in front of me, there's a load of exercise, keep fit equipment I've got balanced in front of us. It's like a bench leaning against the wall with all the sort of bits and stuff hanging on it. That all just flies off onto the floor. And I'm like, okay, we've got to stop talking about this TV program. But because of that, last Monday night, I watched the original version, and I've got an EMF reader, and I thought I'll put it next to me. Now, when the titles come on, it started flashing, sort of going from green to yellow, and then it said there's a bit of an introduction on the original version where it's this bloke sort of telling you about M.R. James and all this, and sort of saying, and he says, "Whistle when I'll come to you." And as he said that, it started flashing again, all the way through the title sequence. It didn't do anything else after that. I was like, oh, okay. I sort of told a few people about this, and they said, "Well, why didn't you film it?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." I'm not a ghost hunter by any means. So
that's actually all our research we've done. It's really a common thing when people see stuff weird, even with all the cameras they've got on them at the moment. Just people just don't think about it.
It is totally
yeah, just don't think about it. It's a really common occurrence.
I kind of thought, well, if it's doing it now, I'll be able to do it again. It'll sort of come back, and whatever is happening will happen. Of course, it didn't, did it? I tried it last night. Set up a camera on the EMF, put it in front of the TV, waited for stuff. Watched the John Hurt version, which is from a few years ago, 2010, I think it was. It's slightly different plot twists in it. Absolutely nothing. Came out of watching that, and I was messing around with the sort of DVD menu, and there's a bloke who does a sort of introductory sort of talk about it. First, Ramsey Lewis or something like that, his name is. And I didn't notice this, but the camera zoomed in and out of focus because it was like, no, I don't want to watch this. That was the only thing that happened, was just this random sort of camera coming out of focus. You can't predict any of this. I mean, all the things I've seen, it's just been totally random.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone to castles and what have you, and you maybe get the feeling that there's something there. But,
you don't deliberately go to haunted locations apart from that ghost walk you went on. You don't go on holiday, go on special ghost walks or...
I've never done that, no. I mean, gone to York, which is quite good. We stayed in a nunnery, which takes in regular people like us. I'm not a nun. And you'd see maybe lights moving, like orbs or something, going down the corridor in this place. So that was quite spooky, but it's not like something I've gone to look for,
No, it's just a holiday. Well, didn't you go to America as well and have some...
Yeah, we went to see family over there. We stayed at the Nut House, which is where John Wilkes Booth stayed. Now, he's the guy who shot Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
So he made a sort of run for it, and he stayed in this actual room that we were in.
Oh, right.
Was where he stayed for about a couple of months after this. Now, to get to that, you've got to go up the side of the building on a sort of staircase. You come into like a little hallway, and you've got the door on the right-hand side that you go through to our room. On the left-hand side, there's like a storage area, which is quite a big room, but it was always locked. Now, I came up once, and I looked. The door was open because staff were doing something. This was in the middle of the afternoon. I saw this woman in Victorian costume with a big Victorian hat on, and she's sort of got blue, like a bright blue sort of dress on. Next door to the Nut House is the old theatre for the town. It's like an old sort of vaudeville theatre. I thought, oh, she may be just an actress or something. I mentioned it to one of the staff the next day, and they said, oh, that's the Blue Lady. It's like, okay. And she was somebody who had stayed there, or she lived there, and she was this ghost that they would see. She was looking out the window waiting for some bloke who never turned up for her.
Wow.
And it's like they've all sort of seen her and they all know about her and stuff. And it's like, okay. So I've seen that. Yeah, that's good.
I've one tick that one off.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, you've never had any interaction, like spoke to them and they responded to you in talking? Or they've responded and looked at you because you're there, but they've never actually...
Do you know, I would like that to happen. It's not happened to me yet, because you could get a lot of information from it. It'd be really interesting if that did happen.
Yeah. You said you say hello and stuff like that when you've seen them.
It's nice to be polite. It's nice to be friendly, because the one time that I did manage to annoy one of them, I got hounded out of that building, so I won't do that again, But I think if it takes a lot of time, it's a really random thing to do. You'd probably be sitting in a room on your own talking to yourself for a while before anything comes forward, but yeah, it's something I would like to happen. It's I mean, I've recently gone out and bought an EMF reader. I've bought a little digital tape sort of recorder. I want to get this sort of stuff and get it sort of maybe in a way that I can show other people, because at the moment it's just my side of the story, and people don't believe you when you say, oh, this happened, I've seen this, or this sort of thing. And they're like, well, no, you're making that up. It's like, why would I do that? It's not going to make me more or less interested. It's just something I've experienced.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like that. I would like to sort of get something more concrete thing. I mean, we went to the Black Country Living Museum. My other half had written a book on Essex called Poison Panic, and it's all about sort of the moral outrage and moral panics where people thought women were going around organising to poison people for burial clubs to get the insurance money. To put it in context, so she had to dress. We were going to do like a promotional video at the Black Country Museum. So she was dressed in Victorian clothing, and she was going to just walk about in the buildings of the Black Country Museum, just sort of talking about bits of the book, and sort of introducing things. And they've got an old sort of parish church in the Black Country place. We went in there to do a bit of filming, and they were okay with that because we said, okay, let's do this. The woman who was like the actor they get to work in there, she said, fine, I'll keep out your way. We did a bit of footage in there, and I actually caught an orb moving across the screen as my other half was coming up the sort of pews, to do her sort of bit of acting. And that's been the only thing I've ever managed to catch.
All right.
Out of the whole sort of thing. I'll send you that video.
Oh yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Great, yeah.
If you can spot it. It doesn't show up too well on my tablet or my mobile, but it comes up on my laptop. So if you get a bigger screen, I think it. But I do sort of say, this is what I saw. Kind of point out the bits that happen.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can put it on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, I can insert it as part of it when we put the podcast out, probably.
Churches are a good place to go in some ways because in the old days people used to hang around these places. Nowadays people don't bother with them, but they were like the focus of the community. So you'd get people going in and out of them quite a lot, on quite a regular basis. It's like the one I saw in York with there's a famous church there. They do a lot of filming for sort of historical dramas, and they've got box pews and stuff, and it's in the center of the town. We were walking along. We were actually going to go to like a commercial haunted house. It's like an attraction you can go to. And there's an alleyway leading off the main street. We look up there as we're walking past, as you do. We both saw this shadowy figure, and he's walking along, sort of leaning against the wall on his left. And he gets so far up the alley, and then he just sort of stops and kind of goes like that into a doorway. And they're like, we're going, you just see that? Yeah, I did. Oh, what was that? It's just that thing where it's kind of like half there, half not there, So we both walk up the alley, and the bit where he sort of disappeared, it was bricked up, sort of arched doorway, but they'd bricked it up a long time ago. So it looked like he was just, like you said, a stone tape.
Yeah, he was still going through what was a doorway to him.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was something we both witnessed, which was quite interesting. That is York, which is quite a nice place, It's good for that sort of thing.
Yeah, steeped in history.
York and Edinburgh, you want to go there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, where I grew up, the town I grew up in is quite an old town. They have things like the Lay Kirk I'm trying to remember because it's been a while since I've been there. The Lay Kirk Church, I think it was, heading to Rickerton. This is in the town. And they had a bit of land that belonged to the church, which they sold off. Now, this land had sort of graves and stuff on it, and they sold all this land off and sort of took the graves out somewhere else and built these new bungalows. In the bungalows, people would experience things like they'd see Roman centurions' legs from the knee down, sort of walking through their sort of houses and stuff.
Wow, that's creepy.
Would be. It's just that thing. It's the recording, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
It's the recording of these people just walking along. Now, I'm assuming that in Roman times, when these people were there moving through, the ground was at a different level.
Yeah.
So they only saw the tops of these guys' legs.
Yeah. I've heard stories like that before, where people have just seen the top half of soldiers marching through fields and stuff, where obviously the ground was lower at some point.
There's one in Essex, isn't there? There's a sort of Roman road that people would see exactly that. They just see like the top half of their leg, well, the bottom half of their legs or whatever. Or they'd see people who were underneath the ground, as it were. So you'd only see like maybe from the waist up, just walking along.
Well, I suppose you should probably up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been
really
good.
Interesting. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. Please drop us a like and give us a review on the podcast. We're available at nearly every podcast outlet there is now, I think, and our YouTube channel. Visit us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And please go and drop our friends a like over at CryptidTV. They're on Twitter and Facebook at the moment, with possibly a YouTube channel starting up as well. So, and again, their links are in the description. So thank you very much, and thank you again, Gordon. It was really, really interesting talking to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sharing. And anyone else who wants to share can email us, the same as Gordon did.
Yep.
Innsmouth@yahoo.com.
Yep.
Stay safe, everyone.
And see you all again soon.